Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the OE Cast. We have a good one today. I think it's an important one to talk about. Last episode, we talked about kind of, planning around scheduling. And one of the things we talked about is the importance of having good holy leisure, sharpening the saw, making sure, you're taking care of yourself. So today we're going to be talking about media consumption, because that definitely is going to play a part in that for a lot of people. How do we do that well? How do we do that as Catholics, as Christians, to make sure, we're not driving ourselves away from sainthood? So today I brought on a good friend, Father Victor, who I've known since back in college. Let's go ahead and bring him on. Father Victor, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Doing well. It's been a long time.
Yeah. When did I met you when I was at UCSB? But
right.
forget what year.
That was 2013.
2013. So I would have been starting my last year there.
Yeah. You're a senior.
Yeah.
And I was a novice, so I was barely starting my Capuchin life, my second year into it.
Oh yeah, only your second year. Yeah, because you joined 2012.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, the one thing I always remember from that year, because people ask me like, "Who's Father Victor?" I was like, "Yeah, it was a novice." They had like Fridays with the friars, and they would always come on campus. And the one thing I always remember is at that time, I think New York Times was doing this. It was like People of New York or something,
Right.
and they did the People of UCSB on Facebook, a Facebook page, and yeah, they featured you on there.
Yeah, we said we were the OG frat.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I remember that.
800 years rolling from St. Francis.
Right, exactly. That was you and who else has that year? Was Brother Brian?
It was myself and Brother Joshua. And
Joshua.
after that was Brother Monty.
Okay.
Not who he was with, but.
Okay. Maybe before you, Brother Brian. Was there Brother Brian? Maybe I'm remembering names wrong.
I think there was maybe the year before that.
Okay.
2 years before that.
I think he was the one who said that he secretly wanted to go on campus every day and have a lightsaber on his side as well. But yeah, that would have been my last year. So at that point, I was pretty well into my conversion. I think I was getting ready to join Focus at that time, which is wild.
It was. Yeah. Your hair was wild too. I remember that. You always have to new hairdo like every week or something.
Yeah. I told my wife about that, and she's like not a fan. She's like, "All right, I'm glad I met you after the fact, because I would dye my hair different colors." I don't know if you were around, but if it was that year, but there was a year that I dyed my hair with the during the colors of Lent. So I did like 2 weeks of purple. And I washed out all the color, did pink for one
coordination.
Yeah, I did it 1 week, and then the next I dyed it purple.
Wow.
That was I think
ordinary
I only did that
time. You got green.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But so Father Victor, you're from California.
From California, Southern California, Rancho Cucamonga.
Well, that's a real town. The Inland Empire, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I always have to. I feel like I always have to clarify with people, like especially now that I'm in the East Coast. Like, yeah, there's a city. It's a real city in California called Rancho Cucamonga.
That's right. It exists. It actually means water ranch in Native American.
That's where the history. I never looked into that. I was like, I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, there used to be like a lot of vineyards out there before it like developed into like a lot of homes and like stores and stuff. But they used to grow a lot of grapes.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a lot of water. There's a couple waterfalls up in the north area. So I'm assuming that's why they call it Rancho Cucamonga.
Oh, interesting. There you go. A history lesson.
There you go.
But yeah, you've been in the Capuchin Franciscan Order for 11 years now, right?
11 years. Yep.
Dang. And priest 2021.
That's right. 2021, I was ordained in San Francisco by Archbishop Cordileone.
Oh, nice. Wow, 2 years.
Yeah.
years. How's it been?
Oh man. Well, I thought, I think in our lives we always think like, okay, I'm gonna get to this level here, like this is my goal. And then you think like somehow everything's gonna stop or something, right? Like that, right? Like when you graduate, like you're at the pinnacle of something. Well, that's what I had. Like my mind was kind of set like, okay, this is the goal. But after that, I felt like God was like, all right, you just begun. Like
Yeah.
it's time to purify even more. It's time to, yeah, just time to grow even more. And I was like, what? Like I didn't expect
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. I mean, I experienced that as well in like marriage, right? You think like you're like, yeah, first you got to make sure your marriage material, then find a spouse, like potential spouse, get married, and then it's like, yeah, then you realize like, oh, now I have so much more to grow. Like I'm not
right.
I'm not there. And I think a lot of times people think of vocation. It's like, oh, you just get there and you're done. You're done.
That's right.
But that's like where the real purification and like the fine tuning of your spiritual life too as well. Like everything
Amen.
happens. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. So yeah, Father Victor also goes by Bro Vic on Spotify as probably I'm assuming other streaming platforms as well.
Yep.
But yeah, you're into rap, is what you do. Um, I'm sure you did that before becoming a priest and a Capuchin, right?
Just a little bit. I would always like mess around with my friends. I was into rap music since I was little, being
Yeah.
raised in the IE. That's like what everyone listens to.
Yeah.
So college was like, just messing around and writing raps with my friends for fun. But when I had my conversion, I started to teach catechism. And I try to, I asked myself, like, how can I communicate these truths and the gospel message in a more fun way? So just an idea kind of came in prayer, and it was just to wrap a message to them. So my first one I ever did was about Mary,
Mhm.
to kind of teach about like who Mary is and stuff. So the kids liked it, so I just kept going with it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it, right? Like God uses our passions, and when you have that conversion, it's like He's like, okay, like I made you with these desires, these passions. Now that you're mine, uh, I'm just gonna use them for good, for for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, the Christian church is like, we've always have been known to Christianize what's secular,
Yeah.
going back like all the way to the first 100, 200 years, when pagan churches were still very popular. And then the Christians began to convert from the pagan churches. They still were taking the pagan rituals and Christianizing it. Like there was this one that I really like. It was called, we call it Rogation Days in the Catholic Church, but at that time it was like these pagans would like march around their crops and ask their pagan gods to bless the crops. And there was this dog god. It was like a dog that would bless their crops. They called it Robigus, and they would pray to Robigus to bless these crops that they would have a good yield for the year. Well, after these pagans became Christians, they're like, we still like this. Like, we still like doing this march, but we're not going to pray to Robigus anymore. We're going to pray to Jesus. So they began to kind of transform it and make it Christian. So, I think we can do that with so many other things. Like, I didn't know that there was Christian rap before, but then I discovered it and I was like, whoa, you could just take the same media and embed it with like, a better message, a different
Right.
message, and serve God that way.
Yeah, yeah. That story reminds me also of like I think I recently learned the history of the Christmas tree. That was a similar thing that they were worshiping some pagan god with a tree, and it was one of the saints. I'm blanking on the saint's name now, but one of the saints was like, "No, like this god's not real," and he went and cut down the tree, and they were like, "Yeah, you're gonna be smited." And it's like, look, I cut it down. Nothing happened. Like this God's not real. This is a real God. And yeah, I think a part of that was like, yeah, now let's take this tree and decorate it for Jesus. They used to use like candles, and I think that they use the candles as light, represent the light of Christ coming into the world. But yeah, that was one that I found interesting as well. But yeah, I think that happens a lot, and I think we'll go into it a little bit, but I think that's one of the key things for Christians and Catholics to do is to take these tools, right, or these medias of the world and kind of use it for good, right? Like, I really like, like Mel Gibson, for example, what he did with like, he kind of made, the Passion kind of mainstream, right? That like, it didn't really feel like just a Catholic movie. It was like a mainstream Hollywood, like full on production.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, we're going to do that for Christ. Like, and it's like an amazing movie. And yeah, I feel like that's something that we need to do more. I think kind of infiltrate ourselves in kind of the culture war, so to speak.
Yeah. I think a lot of people sometimes they have this feeling when they come to a conversion, like, oh, I can't do these things anymore. Right? Like, oh, I can't be into music like I used to, or I can't watch like movies anymore because they kind of sometimes you can go to one extreme. And that people have good intentions with that, but I think as you were saying before, like God never like tells us to leave our skills and talents behind.
Right.
That God wants us to bring those talents into something new, transform, who we are and transform our media and the tools and talents that we have for Christ, for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a truth to kind of in a cleansing sense, right? Sometimes we do need like a little bit of time away from that, especially if it can become like a stumbling block, like, especially, I'll use myself as an example. I also appreciate rap. But before like my conversion, one of the artists that like stuck in my head a lot was 2 Chainz, which he doesn't rap about very good things.
Right.
And there was a period of time where I was like, I just like need to not listen to any rap music. Like I just like, because then it just becomes like it's like just downhill. It just goes downhill from there. It's like, oh yeah, it's like kind of, it's like I'll listen to this, rap songs. Like it's fine. It's not anything derogatory. And then it's like, oh, that beat kind of reminds me of this song. And the next thing I know, I'm listening to 2 Chainz again, and I'm like, nope. Like, so there is that like kind of cleansing period where it's like, yeah, I just got to cut it out completely. And then kind of go back to it. And yeah, I think eventually like you do find those artists that like in the rap scene that like, yeah, pretty good. Like actually it's one Christian rapper I like, I don't listen to him as much these days, but KB, I think is his name. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's pretty good. It was like one of the first ones I was like, oh yeah, this sounds like a mainstream song, but he's like actually talking about Jesus.
Right.
But yeah,
I think that's kind of like the trick. It's like, how do we like, because the one thing that kind of bugs me sometimes is I feel like we have so many talented people in the church. And sometimes I feel like, I don't know if we're selling ourselves short, or like, we don't surround ourselves with the right people or the right tools, but like we could put out really good movies. We could put out good music. It doesn't have to sound cheesy. Sometimes that's like the idea, like, oh, it's Christian, oh, it must sound cheesy. And sometimes it does, but I think we don't have to settle for that. Like we could give our all to Jesus. We can make our media like shine for him and make it like good quality,
Yeah. And I think that's kind of one of the things that I have like criticisms about a lot of like mainstream, like Christian worship music. Like it has its time and place, but I think I've talked about this in a past episode or a past stream. I generally don't like them because a lot of times it feels like just a cheaper version, if that makes sense. It's like, I guess a good example would be like theology of the body. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but like the idea, like St. John Paul II talked about how like, with like the like the sexual revolution, right? This idea, or at some point, people got this idea is like body is like bad, right? And it's like here's a beautiful picture of the body, like crumpled it up, and it's like nope, toss it away, it's bad. And then the like sexual revolution kind of came in, took that balled up like paper, and was like, no, this is actually really good, and just but kept it balled up. But JP2 is like, no, what we actually have to do is unfold it, like open it back up, like restore it, like, and remember, like the body is actually good. Like God created it, and he said it was good. And you have to take that into that same perspective. And I think we have to do that as well as like take these different things in media that we saw. It's like, yeah, there's good things in it, right? Like ultimately, like people are trying to achieve or reach like some kind of desire, which is usually good, and then fulfilling it in a wrong way, right? But like as Christians, we got to take that. It's like, no, there's something beautiful here, but like direct it in a proper orientation, right? It's like, yeah, this is actually how beautiful it is. And that's kind of like what I was saying. What I was trying to say was like with a lot of the mainstream like Christian worship music, my issue is sometimes it doesn't quite get there, right? It's just like still like a watered down version of the actual beauty of what we're trying to like convey in the music. So it's just like a watered down version of like the secular. And it's like, no, like we should, like it should be beautiful, like it can be good,
Right.
like you said. Yeah, there's good ways to do it, I think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know, you've probably heard of him. He was probably considered one of the greatest Christian rap artists of all time, Lecrae.
Yeah.
Probably the most popular. And I really do enjoy a lot of his music. I mostly enjoy his older stuff though, because there was a point in time where I personally felt what you were just kind of saying. Like his music almost was becoming so secular that it was like, wait, is this even Christian anymore now? And some people can argue like, okay, he's trying to go over that side to pull people over to his more of a genre of music, of Christian music. But at the same time, it's like, how do we find that balance? Sometimes we can go too far one way, just like you're talking about the sexual revolution stuff. Like, yes, it's good that they try to retrieve the goodness of the body, but then they went to the other extreme.
Right.
How can we find a middle balance, a balance between the two, where the truth lies? One of our very famous Capuchin professors at the DSPT in California, Father Eugene, would always say, the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. And I think that's very true, especially for this, what we're talking about, it's temperance, how do we temper ourselves? And temperance is in the middle. Temperance is not an extreme, it's somewhere in the middle. It's not like, for example, like food. It's not like fasting. If you could fast, and fasting is good, but if you fast too much, what happens? You become very, very skinny, and you could die.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you gorge yourself, you're always enjoying ice cream every day. Maybe you're gonna become obese, and that's also not good for you. So it's finding that balance. And there's a time and place for everything, right? Time for fasting, time for eating.
Yeah. I think that is an important distinction. It is a time and place for things, right? Yeah, I was gonna say an example, like, should I even admit this on the internet? So I really like as of late, like a lot of Justin Bieber's music.
Yeah.
Like especially as he's like become more Christian. And he's still kind of in that weird balance here and hit and miss on some things, but there is I forget what the name of the song is now. A Purpose, I think is what it's called. It's actually it's very Christian message, right? It's song to God, and it feels very real, very raw, like from the heart of just like thanking God for giving him purpose because he's found God again. And yeah, it sounds like regular like Justin Bieber music, but it's got such a strong message, and I find it so. I guess authenticity is what I really like about it, and it's to the point that I've led like praise and worship and actually use that song in the praise and worship. Like people expect like, the big names like Hillsong and,
Right.
Jesus Coulter, just to like off the top of my head. But like, I was like, no, I'm going to throw some Justin Bieber in there
There you
and
go.
then like, and then go with that. Like it's so like, yeah, it's amazing just like how good it is for just, yeah, what he's trying to say. And I think that's the thing. And yeah, I think to backtrack a little bit, I think a lot of Christian music has kind of started to go a little bit mainstream, right? They've kind of lost it. So it's like it kind of went in the right direction and kind of moved away again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to find that sweet spot. Like, where is
Mhm.
it? Why? How can we evangelize in the best way?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. To kind of pivot a little bit here, because we are talking about like, media conversion, changing things like that. Um, I did want to talk a little bit about Shia LaBeouf. I don't want to go too much into it. I know I don't want to respect the guy as well. I don't want you to share anything you don't feel comfortable sharing. But I remember, so the first thing I messaged you about him, I was just like, "Hey, is Shia LaBeouf talking about you?" Because if you haven't seen it, there's a like Instagram or there's a video where Shia LaBeouf gave a shout out to the Capuchins that Father Victor was having a come and see. Um, Most people probably thought like, "What Shia LaBeouf shouting out the Capuchins?" My first thought was like, Father Victor. Wait, is that Father Victor that I know? So I was starstruck in that regard. I was like, "Wait, is Father Victor getting shout outs from Shia LaBeouf?" Um, but I've heard his like testimonies. Like he did an interview with Bishop Barron. He did a podcast with shoot, I always forget his name. The guy who plays Punisher on the Netflix series. Um, but what was that like for you? Like, because he was visiting your province, right? That was where he kind of
That's right.
started
Yeah,
going.
so basically in the summer of 2000 and what was that, a year ago or 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
It's been a while. But anyways, it was the summertime. I think it was 2 summers ago. Uh, you know, he wanted to know who the Capuchins were all about because basically what had happened is that he was going to AA,
Right. Right. You
and
mentioned that.
he was experiencing a lot of healing from that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think he met their director by the name of
Yeah.
Abel Rivera, and Abel and him kind of hit it off, and he was like, "Hey, I'm making a movie about Padre Pio," and kind of asked him if he wanted to play a role in it. Because Shia had been kind of blacklisted from
Yeah.
Hollywood and stuff, and he was struggling with things. But he was also coming to a spiritual understanding of who he was and who God was, right?
Hmm.
At the same time. And because he received so much healing from this AA program, realizing it were like where the roots of it came from, he says, "Well, I want more of this church. I want more of Christianity because it
Hmm.
helped me so much. Like, how can I get more involved?" So then, he met Abel Rivera and stuff, and so he's like, "Well, let's have you play Padre Pio." And so he knew nothing about Padre Pio. I said, "Well, I guess he's like a method actor, kind of like what was his name? Heath Ledger, when he played the Joker. Like, he really became the Joker. So he says, I want to become like Padre Pio. How do I know like who Padre Pio is? Well, I'm going to go talk to the people who might know. So I don't know, he might have randomly looked us up, but he went to the mission, old mission San Ynez, which is one of the missions that we have, that we
Hmm.
take care of in the Archdiocese of LA. And he just started coming to daily mass, like every day. And, so he was driving up from Los Angeles 2.5 hours, 3 hours to
Oh
go to
wow.
daily mass in the morning. Of course, he had also came up with his RV, so sometimes he would like sleep in his truck or whatever
Hmm.
for a few days, and so he could just go to daily mass up there. And so some of the friars who were living there at the time, Brother Alex, Brother Jude, kind of Brother Marvin, they kind of invited him in to the rectory and stuff, and started talking to him, and just became his friend.
Hmm.
And he had questions and stuff, but mostly I think what I heard was that it was mostly just being normal with him and treating him like a normal dude, which really
Yeah.
appealed to him. And that kind of began his like friendship with us and his
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think that's what you said. Like, I love that because I think it speaks to what we're talking about too. Is like the media we're saying it's like it's got to be like normal, like your music just has like your music, your movies, like it just has to feel like it's normal. Like it's just got to be that way where it just like blends in, but still stands out, right? It's kind of like actually I don't know if I mentioned this, but the OECAS stands for ordinarily extraordinary, and the whole idea is taking the ordinary things of life and allowing God to take them and make them extraordinary. And so that's like one of those things. And like when I was in Focus, like that's the thing. Like you just saw conversion just by sharing life, because then like people realize like, yeah, you're not so different. Like
Right.
there's it's like I think I mean that's obviously what the devil wants to think, is that we are so different. And when you take that time to actually know and get to know somebody, you like realize the similarities, the connections, and things like that.
Right. We
Yeah.
all have the same, we all bleed the same, right? We all have the same experiences. And um yeah, I think like that what you just said fits well. It's like they weren't even trying to talk theology or movies with him. I didn't, besides Transformers, I've never seen any other movie he's been in. Like I'm not really into movies that much, to be honest. I even told
Yeah.
him that, but we just talked about life. One thing that he and I connected on was like issues within the family. You
Hmm.
know, we connected on that point. Being very human with each other, and I think that was for him. I think that was very important that he could connect on a human level with somebody, not just, hey, can I get your autograph or can I get your selfie, but like
Yeah.
just talking as a normal person.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a thing. Yeah. That's for a lot of people. It's rather than seeing him as a name, seeing him as a person. And that's for like a lot of people. Um, and yeah, I think thinking about that too. What was I going to say? I remember in the interview he had with Bishop Barron, there was a moment that I forgot exactly the words that Bishop Barron was talking about. I think he was kind of saying something along the lines of like, yeah, there's people who are broken. They're longing for something, desiring for something. They're coming up empty. And I remember Shia LaBeouf did like this little like gesture, just like this. And then like of everything in the interview, that was what struck me the most.
Mm,
Was that this simple gesture, he just kind of like went like this, and he was like basically kind of saying like, yeah, that was me. Like I know exactly where those people are because that person was me. And I think I connected with him on that just because like it was like, yeah, I remember immediately like my moment of like, yeah, I had nothing. And I was looking for something to fulfill me, and it wasn't until I found God that like I was truly filled. And it was like in that moment you connect with him as just a person. Like yeah. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Did you have an inkling like something like powerful was happening like right before your eyes, or was it just like kind of just happened?
I think it just happened. I mean, for me, when I first met him, I was doing a come and see at San Lorenzo.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is before he gave the shout out for us, but uh, brother Alex told me, "Oh, guess who's here?" I was driving up and I was on the phone with him. He's like, "Guess who's here?" And I said, "Who?" He's like, "Oh, Shia LaBeouf is up here." And I was like, "Okay." Like I didn't expect that. Like like I was thinking like this would be hilarious. Imagine like advertising, "Hey, come on and come and see, and you'll meet Shia LaBeouf." Like no, it was nothing like that. But it was funny. I'm pulling up with all these candidates and stuff, and like we get out, and Shia's there to greet us with some of the brothers. And like my candidates, I didn't tell them a thing, because I didn't know until like an hour or two before I got there. So
Right.
you're like, "What? You didn't tell us Shia LaBeouf was gonna be here?" So they were going crazy and stuff. And then the real cool, like humbling part was like Shia's like he knew who I was ahead of time. He's like, "Oh, "Your father Vic, you do the rap music, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I really like it." And I was like, "Whoa, thanks."
Yeah.
That was a very human moment for me. It's like, wow, he listened to my music. That's pretty cool. Um, and he just like, kind of hung around with us the whole weekend, and we even did face sharing with him. I said, come do some face sharing. We're going to talk about like the life of Francis together and share about our personal life. So it was really cool.
That's
And he
awesome.
kind of just became our friend after that, and talked to him sometimes text him, and
Yeah.
we had tacos together and just fun
Nice.
stuff like that. Got to know a little bit of his family, got to meet his wife. I baptized his daughter
Nice.
last summer, which is really cool, really
Yeah.
powerful to see them accept like everything of the faith. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. When I found out about the Shia LaBeouf, like Padre Pio movie, and like I remember seeing a clip where he's just like talking about how he's immersed in something like more than himself. I was like, I think this guy's gonna convert. Like, I'm pretty sure this guy is gonna become Catholic. Like, I was like, yeah, just knowing that, like, immersion into who Padre Pio is, it's like, how can you not? Like, yeah. I
Yeah,
actually, intriguingly enough, I looked at like one of my friends had pointed this out. I was like, if you look at young Padre Pio, pictures of young Padre Pio with Shia LaBeouf, you're like, whoa.
yeah, they kind of look similar, right?
They do. They look so similar. I was like, well, this is crazy. Um,
Yeah, he
but yeah,
took his role very seriously. Like
yeah.
I think he fell in love with the character of Padre Pio, the person of him, because we, of course, you see in books or something, we hear about the supernatural side of
Mhm,
Padre Pio, right? The
mhm,
miracles, the stigmata, the
mhm.
bilocation, reading of hearts. Those are all great things, but Padre Pio was very human too, right? Like he
Yeah.
struggled with anger and other things like that.
Mm,
And I think that connected with Shia because he was going through his most human time at that point, like
yeah.
his weakest time in his life, probably.
Yeah.
And I think that helped him to really connect. Even though this figure is very divine, he
Mhm.
connected with the humanity of Pio. So I think it really affected him emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah. And the big reason why I wanted to bring up Shia LaBeouf is in his interview also, he talked about talked about like his acting, right? Like his vision for playing Padre Pio. And um he also connected a little bit to the mass, but like he talked about how he is telling a story, right? Like he's not trying to pretend to be Padre Pio. Like he is portraying Padre Pio. He's sending a message through the way he kind of paints this picture of Padre Pio. And he said the similar thing with like the mass, where it's like, in a sense, he's like the priest is performing the mass, right? He's up there performing, but he's like you're entering into the mass, like a good performance, like a good good acting, like pulls you in and draws you in. And I thought that was like a perfect like visual for the mass too, because it's like, and I don't know the guy enough to know if he was intentional about this, but like talk about how like when we enter into mass, it's the same sacrifice that Jesus made, right? We're not redoing it, we're not repeating it. It's we're entering into the same one, sharing in the same event. And so like we talk about, I think the phrasing is mass happens like outside of time, right? Like it's timeless. Um, but I saw that in the way that he described acting, where it's like the way it draws you in is because you are entering into something, right? You're entering into the mystery of the death and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ in a
Mhm.
very real way. And and I think that also speaks into how we should discern like the media that we consume, because I think when you think about it that way, it's like, yeah, that what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're playing, the media is ultimately pulling you into something, right?
Yeah,
And it's like, what is that something? And when you get
right.
pulled into that, like you are transformed, like it changes you.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in college before my conversion, and I was living in the world. I was an atheist, and you know, a lot of the guys I would listen to, like in with rap and stuff, they influenced me. You
Yeah.
know, like if you keep hearing songs about drugs and the pleasures and stuff like that, uh, over time, it's going to mold who you are.
Mm.
I began to want to do drugs. I began to want to do those things that the rappers would rap about. It sounded so appealing.
Mhm.
It almost became part of who I was, and it actually did. I started to follow a different way. Started to, I mean, I didn't have a lot of money being a college student, but I was, I wanted to have the fun that they were talking about. It sounds so
Yeah.
appealing, and it molded me. And that's the danger is I think if, depending on where we go, what movies we watch, what music we listen to, what shows we partake in, that could also mold who we are and who we become.
Mhm.
That's why I said it's a very important thing to regulate that, to be careful, not to be like prudish, like, oh, you can't do anything, but just realize who you are. Knowing thyself, as Socrates says, like what is your weakness? If listening to a couple rap songs is going to make you like want to roll a blunt and get high, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Right.
Maybe you have to look for a different genre, but trying to find that balance of what that means. Maybe it's just I have to listen to Christian rap now. Who knows? Um, but yeah, I think I think you're right. Like we have to kind of just kind of realize like what we're actually doing. With the mass. And I
Mhm.
think it's so important that priests celebrate mass with reverence. And
Mhm.
sometimes priests could make it into a joke, or that not necessarily a joke, but just kind of be too like too partyish, I guess you could
Yeah.
call it. I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like you kind of forget that God is there.
Mhm.
Um, of course, being human, understanding our humanity is important, but then they take it to another level where it's like now we kind of forgot God is here, that there's the holy sacrifice of the mass, we're
Yeah.
partaking in right now. Um, and I think that's what drew Shia. It was like he loved the reverence of mass.
Mhm.
And he saw the difference between an irreverent mass and a reverent mass, and he preferred the reverent mass because you know it was transforming him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that says a lot too, in not just like with the mass, but also in the media we consume. Like people are aware, like like what's being said, like the message, the deeper kind of meaning or message behind things. Like people pick up on it. Like even as somebody is like new to the faith as Shia, like he realized the difference, like you said, like a reverent versus irreverent mass. um so yeah, like myself, like I started going to Latin mass. It was back in California. I moved out to New Hampshire in 20 oh how long has it been, 2021. It's actually almost 2 years to the date. But like before that we were living in Ventura, um so just outside Santa Barbara. And it was like right around the start of like the COVID lockdowns. That's when my wife and I started going to Latin mass, because a lot of the parishes in our area started to just like shut down before there was anything from like the bishop saying like, hey, you guys have to stop masses. And we were like, well, what are you going to do? The only mass we could find that was like that said that they were still going on was Latin mass. And so I started going. And before, actually backing up a little bit, before I moved to Ventura, we were working as focused missionaries at UC Irvine. And the parish that the mass that they were having there was a lot of like irreverence in the mass. And so I was very jaded from that. And so um yeah, like coming back, yeah, so then when I started going to Latin mass, it was just like this like switch like flipped. I was just like, oh my goodness, like this is like the most reverent mass that I've been to. um and that's like where I started like drawing like being drawn into. My wife was a little bit more hesitant, but I fell in love with the Latin mass. And so when we moved out here, we started going to an FSSP parish and started going to Latin Mass. But yeah, I think there is, like you said, that level of knowing yourself. And I think that, like, I don't have anything against Novus Ordo Mass. Like, I think that's, sometimes people think all people go to Latin Mass have that criticisms, like, good, like Latin Mass good, Novus Ordo bad. I don't. It's like, as long as they're both done reverently, like, I'm all for it, and you can tell the difference. But yeah, well, the point I was going to make is, like, yeah, you know that difference, like, it speaks to you. You got to know yourself and know what's going to feed you spiritually. And when you're saying, like, yeah, it doesn't mean you, like, completely, like, disconnect yourself from things, or, or become, like, prudish is the word you said. I think that's true too, because there's a sense of being aware, right? There's a difference between listening music, watching movies, and not being aware of what it's feeding you, like the message that it's giving you. Because it's not like you want to watch only movies that, only tell you the good things, right? Like, even the Bible's not that way. We hear about all of the bad things people did, all of their sins, all their struggles. But we also hear, like, the real message in the end is, like, no, but God came so that we could have the redemption. Like, we could be freed and healed of all these things. And it's like, yeah, it's the same thing with, like, the media that we watch. There's things in movies that you're just going to have to, like, it's going to be there, but, like, you just got to know, it's like, all right, that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to absorb. I should not. Yeah. Discernment. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Discernment. Yeah. And I think, yeah. And it goes back to, like you said, knowing yourself, like, knowing what it's going to have effect on you. Yeah. So for you right now, I think you mentioned that you don't really watch movies all that much, but do you, like, music, I would assume, is kind of where you find most of your media consumption?
Yeah, it would be mostly with music, listening to music or writing music. I make that into a prayer usually, or if I'm going through something, if I had a bad day, sometimes I'm like, get out my garage band, start trying to make a beat or something, and put some words on it, to try to express myself.
Yeah.
So I typically do with music. But occasionally I watch some movies. It has to be a good movie. It has to be a movie that I'm really into.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the last movie I saw that I really enjoyed, and some people didn't like it, and that's fine, but I saw it in a different way, and that was the Batman movie.
With what's his name? Robert Pattinson?
Yeah, the newest one. I did enjoy the trilogy with Christian Bale too.
Yeah.
But I really liked the character of the Batman in the new remake, because I felt like it was I could really relate to him. He was a human, very human, who lived in a very human world, right? Like the very first scene, he's engaged in, like, he's like in a dark alley, and he has to save some guy who's getting, like, I don't know, jumped or something. And he's kind of disappointed, like, in the reality of the world. And this whole time, like, he's having an internal struggle with himself, like, I have to sacrifice some things for something else, and it sucks because like, someone has to give hope, right? He says at the very end, like, someone has to be the one to give hope in this messed up world. And so that's why I kind of like the movie, because I started thinking about myself in the priesthood, and, like, it's not always easy, but this is reality, and we have to give hope of the resurrection, hope of the gospel message, hope of Jesus. Someone's got to do it, like, can't all just sit back. So it's like movies like that are the ones that I watch because it gets my interest, because I find a way to apply it to my own life. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I actually agree with you. I actually enjoyed it. And I think that it does matter how you approach it. Because I think that I personally wouldn't categorize it as like a superhero movie, right? Like a superhero movie is always about like the action, the heroics, and it's like to some sense like a feel good movie, I think. But this one wasn't. Like, yeah, I think it really dove more into like the humanity and the person of the Batman. Because I think that's something that you don't really see often. So yeah, I thought I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It did have its, action moments and, things
Of
like
course.
that, but it'd be an interesting Batman movie without.
Right.
But yeah, like it does dive into the human person, I think, more, and that's pretty cool, I think. Yeah. Yeah, that was actually you answered what I was going to ask, which was like, what's the most recent movie you watched and really enjoyed? Did you ever watch Father Stew?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
I've heard mixed reviews on it.
Hmm.
And I guess the biggest controversy that I heard was like, is Father Stew too human? Like, right? It's like, is it not religious enough?
Hmm.
And so I haven't seen it, so I can't really say an opinion. But I mean, I could say in general that like I think it's good that a movie does portray a priest in a human way.
Yeah.
We have to be careful, of course, like how we portray this person,
Right.
but uh to say like a priest or anyone else is like this super holy guy just holds them up to a pedestal. I think that's unfair and it's not reality. I appreciate movies that show the reality of the human person, how complex we can be, and at the same time can kind of show that a human person can become saintly through the grace of God.
Hmm.
But there has to be, again, going back to balance. There's got to be a balance. So, what did you think about it?
I enjoyed it, but I could see that criticism. There are certain things like in his past that it's like it wasn't like firmly shown to be like a bad thing, right? Like it is like, oh, this past sin that he had. It's like, okay, like it happened, but like it's got to be clear that like that's it's a bad thing. Like it wasn't a good thing, and that he transformed, and changed it and seen that. So I thought it made a little bit light of that, but overall, I thought it was a great movie. Like you said, I think it's something that a lot of people need to see, and I think it does a good job of kind of like what we were talking about with, your experience with Shia. Like it's just seeing the person. Like it's like Father Stew. Like I mean, I didn't even know who Father Stew was. Like I was like, it's like different seeing like, oh yeah, there's a Padre Pio movie versus like, oh, there's a movie about Father Stew. It's like, who's Father Stew? But yeah, did a good job of just like this is his life. Like this is what he went through, to ultimately become a priest, and like you find like his joy, and you share in his joy, and it's like transformative. And I think that's a key thing, is that I think anybody who watches it can find something that they relate to, like in their life. Is like, oh yeah, that's where I was,
Mm,
and then ultimately like find the true message of joy in Jesus Christ, and how he can take those those desires, those passions in our life, and uses it for good. Um, but it also, I think, teaches you about suffering and how to suffer well. Now, that for me was a big thing, is how to suffer well, because I think
mm,
that's probably one of my weaknesses. Is I will
mm.
often like buy something or do something a certain way to avoid like the slightest inconvenience. It's like it's not a big deal, but if I could do it and have it let be a little less painful, I'll take it. I'll do it that way. um yeah, versus just like, yeah, it's you just kind of do it. It's like, oh yeah, it's gonna suck, but just
Yeah,
just do it and suffer well. It's like that's probably the hardest thing. But yeah, I enjoyed Father Stew.
nice.
Yeah, what did you get to see early showing? Because I know Shia showed the Padre Pio to the Capuchins. Did you get to watch it?
I had an opportunity to watch it, but I had something else going on that day, so I didn't get to. I heard from some of my friars who did watch it that they got mixed reviews. I think what I heard is that like the movie kind of focuses more on the politics in Italy in that time,
Gotcha.
as opposed to Padre Pio. So it's almost like a misleading title from what I
Interesting.
hear. Uh, so again, it was Abel Rivera who was the director. Um, the friars gave him feedback um, of how we thought it should go, but of course he had his own ideas. So
Right.
we'll see how the final edit, like how it comes out. I'm assuming they're doing that, the editing of it. I don't
Right.
know anything about the release date, but I just hope that at least gives Padre Pio. I don't know. It helps people in their spiritual life and connects
Yeah.
people to Pio at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. Pio's Padre Pio's it's one of those like heavy hitters. Like, yeah, I think that well, when you pray for his intercessions, he's like he goes hard.
Yeah, he
Like
comes in.
yeah.
I prayed. He's the one saint besides our Blessed Mother and Saint Michael where I've used him in intercession and I've seen some things happen.
Mhm.
So I know he's like watching over us,
Yeah.
like watching over me specifically as a cap. Um, but he definitely he definitely comes through when you ask for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a friend, like a personal friend whose father it was sick in the hospital. They had a strong devotion to Padre Pio, and yeah, like through his intercession had like miraculous healing
Yeah,
happen. He was out of the hospital very quickly. They got an opportunity to venerate one of his gloves, which is cool. Like they brought it to the hospital and able to have that veneration of it, and boom. And then also my chaplain, when I was a missionary at University of Vermont, he had like a bachelor party the day before he was ordained, or the night before he was ordained, and he was hanging out with some of his brother priests and seminarians, and his spiritual director had brought him a gift, which was Padre Pio's glove, and the priest Father John had a strong devotion to Padre Pio, um, and he opened it and saw it was like an opportunity to have like Padre Pio's glove on the altar for his like first mass, and he was like jaw dropped. But the thing that was really cool was I think one of the other priests had left the room to go to the bathroom or something, and he was coming back up the stairs, and he's like, "Did you guys spray like air freshener or something like that? Like it smells like
like
roses."
roses. Yeah,
Yeah. And she was like, it was so strong. Like I could smell it all the way, like as I was coming up the stairs, and like, no, like, and it was like, yeah, like it was the called the odor of holiness, right?
right.
Yeah. So yeah, Padre Pio, man. So yeah, I'm excited. I think I'm gonna go watch it. Regardless of, yeah, I've heard the mixed reviews as well, but yeah, I'm curious to see. I mean, at the very least, I'm a big Shia fan, so well, not a big Shia fan, but I am a fan of Shia's movies, and I watched him, back in the Disney Channel days. So it's like just for that alone, like I want to see it, and I kind of want to see his portrayal of Padre Pio, because the way that he described a lot of his like methods of like preparing for the scenes that he was doing, like I think it spoke, yeah, it spoke to me, and I was like, yeah, I think that's like gonna be crazy. Like I love wait, was it brother Alex that was with him on the
Yeah, it was brother Alex. Hmm.
yeah, he said that like it was like one of my favorite things. He's like, yeah, when I was like getting ready to do the scenes, when I needed to get like into character, I would just turn to brother Alex and just like, I love you, brother, and he'd say, I love you back, and it's like, And it's like, all right, I'm ready. And I was like, yeah, like that's it. Like you just need to enter into like that fraternal love, and in that way you understand kind of like what's going on. Like, it seems so simple, but it's like it's huge when you notice that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think yeah, and it's cool we talked about these because I think it gives a lot of preview about a lot of the other topics I want to talk about this season, which is brotherhood, fraternity, like the importance of that. So I think it's gonna be ministry. Yeah, I want to talk about ministry as well, with one of my friends who does ministry for work. But
Sure, good stuff.
yeah, cool. Did you have any last thoughts maybe that we didn't touch on?
I think that's pretty much it. I think when it comes to media consumption, it's how are we temperate with it? How can we enjoy it, but at the same time, not go to an extreme?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we use it to glorify God?
Yeah, I think that's the key thing that you said is how does it glorify God, and ultimately how does it bring us closer to God?
Right.
Yeah, because last week, or not last week, last show I talked about how the idea of like holy leisure. I don't know if you've heard that term, but it's like doing recreational things, but like a lot of times people go and think that holy or leisure just in general just means like separating yourself from everything, like disconnect. But it's like no, like actually it should be an opportunity to connect with God. And so like what you do for your leisure should ultimately bring you closer to God. And I think that what you said is right on. Like media consumption is all about discernment, right? And I think a good thing, like my practical tip would be like not to go through that journey alone, right? Like watch movies. I mean that just leads into like fraternity, right? Like share time with people, but like if you want to like really discern like and change your like media consumption, maybe you're in a place where it's like I'm consuming too much of this, and it's like I gotta like make sure that I'm doing it well. Like it's like all I'm doing is binge watching everything on Netflix. Like let's take a look at it. And I think the best advice I could say is not do it alone. Like if you have a spiritual director, like talk to your spiritual director about it. I think that's an important thing. If you have friends that you watch movies with, like talk about the movies, like and discuss like, is this bringing me closer to God or not? And I think
Right.
that's just it's a process. It's a process, and I think you start to enjoy it more. I think like I find that I watch movies less but enjoy it more. Like even if I watch a bad movie, I'm like enjoying watching movies more because I'm like more cognizant of like the ultimate thing of like how is this affecting my soul, and affecting me on my journey to becoming a saint.
Right.
Well, Father, it's awesome to have you.
Thanks again, Eugene. Thanks. Appreciate it. It's a blessing, and it was fun.
Yeah. So if you guys are interested here, I have a few links. Oh, that's not working. I gotta fix that somehow. I'll just copy and paste it in here. There you go. There is a link to Father Victor's Instagram, and then the Capuchin West website. And then you can also find. Did I also?
Find me on Spotify, Bro Vic, BRO space VIC. At the real Bro Vic is Instagram with THA instead of THE. Catch us on capuchinswest.org and at Capuchinswest on Instagram.
There you
If
go.
you're interested in religious life, come to one of our come and sees. You never know. Shia LaBeouf may appear one day. I don't know.
There you go. That's a good plug. You have a chance to see Shia LaBeouf, meet Shia LaBeouf. So I got those in there. I'll make sure to throw those links as well in the video description. So you can follow those. And also a quick shout out. I do this every episode. So if you were listening to intro music, if you like that intro music, that is from a friend of mine, Allie Ward. I just threw in her links there. She has a link tree. Check out her music as well. She's awesome. An example, I think, also of what we were talking about, of making the music and making it sound normal. Again, Father Victor, thanks. Do you want to do a quick prayer for basically anybody listening to this?
For all your viewers?
All
In
right,
the
sounds
Father
good.
and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Good and gracious Father, we thank you for this time we've had together in this conversation. Help us in our media consumption. Give us discernment to know how much of it we should consume and when's the right time for it and when we should kind of step back from it. Help us to realize that this should help us to come closer to you. Guide us in our life, that we may have a holy leisure and direct all of our thoughts and actions ultimately towards you and your glory. May Almighty God bless all the people who are watching this and listening. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you, Father. And everybody who's here, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in the next episode. That'll be in March. I don't have a date yet, but I'll keep you updated on that. Till then, I'll see you guys later.